And now, turning to our program, I'm pleased to welcome Adam Ricks, President and founder of Watermark Initiative, to introduce our speaker. Adam has lived and worked internationally for 3 decades, specializing in water law, infrastructure, and technology. Here in Wisconsin, Adam has served on the boards of companies and nonprofit organizations. Please welcome Adam Ricks, who will introduce our speaker.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Kent, for that introduction. It's good to see many of you. Many of you are familiar to me from other organizations around town. This is my first visit to the Milwaukee Rotary Group, so I'm enjoying it so far. Thank you for the lunch. And today, I have a great pleasure of introducing a dear friend and colleague, Paul Verdu, as I hope you had a chance to look at his CV. It's quite impressive. Paul has lived and worked around the world. Paul and I met about 10 years ago when our children were attending the same small school out in Heartland, Wisconsin. And I was immediately taken by Paul's perspective on the world. And in a time where many of us could probably agree that many leaders lean on perception as opposed to perspective, I found Paul's perspective on the world to be invaluable, as I, in turn, found myself as chairman of the board of directors, and I needed to lean on people like Paul who have a savvy and awareness of how the world works, how institutions function. And I'll leave you with this. Within minutes of meeting Paul, we started swapping stories about working in South Africa. So I encourage some of you during the Q&A session to ask Paul questions about his time in Africa. Paul's also lived and worked in Canada, which may be of interest to some of you given the current dynamic between our neighbor and us. So with that, I'll turn it over to Paul, and please fire away with Q&A because that's where Paul shines. Thank you.
Coming off of a couple of knee surgeries, a little slow on the stairs. And Tom, you confirm what I've always known, that happiness involves a keg of beer. And the keg connector sounds like the best event, if you guys have to choose. But thank you so much for having me. Thanks for the introduction, Adam. Always good to see you, my friend. I greatly admire what I've learned about the Rotary Club. I've always known some parts of it, but greatly admire the work that you do to make Milwaukee a better place and then globally make all kinds of cities and areas a better place to live. One of the things I read is that being a Rotarian is all about forging connections with each other, connections with the community, and it's apropos because if you were to look up Asahi's global vision or purpose, it is to create meaningful connections. So the beer business and what you guys do go hand in hand. Get this clicker. Most of the talk today is going to be really about the tumultuous world of the alcohol beverage space. We were just sharing stories about the craft beer business. And the pace of change in this industry is like never been seen before. This creates a lot of challenges, but it also creates a lot of opportunities. And I'm going to start, if you don't mind, with a little bit of background on Asahi and what we're up to. So we're part of Asahi Group Holdings, which is one of the most respected companies based in Tokyo, Japan, primarily a beverage company operating around the world, and the proud owner of Asahi Superdry, which is the largest Japanese beer brand in Japan by a large margin, and actually the largest Japanese beer brand in the world. As time has gone on, and in 2016, Asahi Group had an opportunity to expand their portfolio and acquired brands from a company that I used to work for, SAB Miller. In 2016, Asahi acquired basically all of the European business from SAB Miller. And that included brands from Poland, Czech Republic like Pilsner Urquell, Italy like Peroni, and so on and so on. It made Asahi all of a sudden become the 7th largest beer company in the world. But we've always looked at the US as a bit of a gap. If you want to be a global player in the world of beer, you have to have a significant presence in the US, which is one of the largest beer markets in the world, obviously. We had sold, through a small organization, Asahi Superdry, for years in this country. If you are a fan of beer and perhaps sushi or Japanese food, you may have run across Asahi in your travels throughout the States. But really, there was a gap in terms of being able to go big and to win in the US market. So in 2024, Asahi bet big, just trying to get this to go. There we go. Maybe just had to play catch up. Asahi bet big in the United States, and we acquired a company called Octopi, which is a large beverage manufacturing facility based near Madison in the town of Wanakee, which is where I live over near the brewery now. Actually, the shortest commute of my life, and I'm very happy about that. And so we basically acquired Octopi to have a presence in the US to brew not only our own beer, but to also continue down the path of innovation and doing all kinds of things that would allow us to truly go after the opportunity in the US. So what does that look like as we combine two different organizations? So who are we? We are now 315 people living in 15 states across the country, 2 office locations. The lion's share of those people are with me in Wanakee. We have 1 production facility. If you're ever in the Madison area, please stop by. We have a beautiful tap room. I'm not allowed to make a commercial, but it's worth a visit. I'd be happy to show you around. We have 2 warehouses, 4 third-party distribution centers, and our goal is, like I said before, to create meaningful connections coast to coast. Our brands, which you see here, are Asahi Super Dry and Asahi Super Dry 00, as well as Twisted Shots. I'm not going to talk much about that, but it's a fun shooter brand, and Google it, check it out. It's the life of the party. And then Octopi, which is our beverage manufacturing facility. What do we do at our facility in Wanakee? In the last 12 months, we've produced 192 million 12-ounce can equivalents. We are co-packer, so that's for 18 different clients in 194 different beverage types and flavors in 10 different package formats. So that's still the largest part of our business, is co-packing for other brands. So you know a little bit more about Asahi, so now I'm going to jump into what it's like to be working in the alcohol beverage space as we stand here today. What does the landscape look like behind us as we entered this market with a big bet? I will say the beverage alcohol space is changing faster than ever. And maybe you as consumers will have noticed that when you're out in the stores or out at dinner or just noticing what's on the drinks menu. But with this change comes lots of opportunity and lots of uncertainty, and we as Asahi are taking this head on. A big milestone happened in 2022, actually. For the first time in the history of the US business, spirits became bigger than beer. And that's in dollar sales. Still more units consumed in beer, but a lot more dollars are now consumed in spirits. It's been and it's interesting to be standing here in the middle of Brew City, one of the homes of beer in the United States. And if you really look back in the world of beer, you can trace the origin back to the 1800s, right? Middle to late 1800s, beer kind of entered the US, entered many markets around the world as basically German and Czech immigrants kind of branched out and started their own beer companies. And from the 1800s till about 2005, everything seemed to be moving at a nice pace and a little bit slow and easier to manage. But now there's seismic shifts in the category. And the consumers, like I said, you may have noticed as a consumer, but for those of us working in the industry, the ground is literally moving beneath our feet, and we're trying to get a grip on where things are headed. And as I mentioned, in 2022, spirits became bigger. The long-standing love affair in America with beer has been now eclipsed by lots of other options. And I'll tell you a little bit now about why the spirits growth has taken off. First, in the world of spirits, the growth has been fueled by trading up and super premiumization. I don't know if any of you are bourbon fans or other spirits fans, but everybody trades up, right? Everyone's buying, searching for that next great thing. And so dollar sales in the category have just exploded as brands have become more and more premium. You're looking at a brand here called Bardstown. It's run by a friend of mine, Pete Marino. I just talked to them the other day. They are continuing to buck the trend, and this brand is up double digits, and it sells at a minimum of $50 a bottle. And there's all kinds of brands like that. And this is sort of the entry level of super premium. I don't know if anyone's had Pappy Van Winkle. You can spend thousands of dollars on that for some reason. The second reason that this change has happened is the cocktail culture. I was talking to someone earlier about Mad Men and all the cocktails that were consumed in the 60s. That whole vibe has kind of come back, and cocktails are the it thing now. I don't know if any of you were like me during COVID and became a home bartender. Probably. That sort of accelerated that change. You couldn't go out to a bar and have someone make you a drink, so you figured out how to do it at home. And that exploded this cocktail culture even further. And then taking it a step further, if you can have a pre-mixed cocktail in a can that's easy to grab and go, that's as good as almost any drink you can get in a bar, why not? So canned RTDs, which I'll talk about in detail in a moment, are on fire. And you've probably seen that out at the stores and even on menus. And then finally, Gen Z. Anyone a parent of a Gen Z? I am. They're just different. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as well. But if you recall, I recall back to my days, Adam will probably be the same thing. You turn 21 and you have your first beer. And when you turned 21 back in the day, you drank beer. Like the cheapest beer you could find in 30 packs. Eventually, as you got older, you started dabbling in spirits and other fine things. But today, Gen Z is jumping right into the spirits category from ground zero. So with the RTD cocktails and beyond. So that has also caused a massive change. The third thing, can you guys remember back pre-1996? And do you remember the fact that spirits advertising was illegal? It was. And in '96 that changed, and spirits were allowed to advertise finally. It still took like major networks. Remember when we used to have like major networks too, like 3 of them? Well, those networks did not really take ad dollars from spirits companies until the early 2000s. So they've really only been marketing spirits in full force for the last 20, 25 years. And quite frankly, they've grabbed onto that with all their hearts. And actually, I believe the spirit industry does a better job of marketing and building their brands than the beer industry does today. So as spirits have soared, beer has taken on most of that brunt. And spirits soar and beer stumbles. For many, many years now, the 4 largest beer brands in America, or the 4 largest American beer brands, Bud Light, Budweiser, Miller Lite, Coors Light, have been in decline for many years, actually. But that's been really concentrated in between 2013 and 2023. Those 4 brands alone have shed 16 market share points. So if you're Molson Coors or Anheuser-Busch, you're like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? And we'll talk about that a little bit more. For most of those years, there was another beer in the category that was picking up the pace. So the craft beer boom, we've had a couple of them. And for many years, as domestic beers declined, craft beer grew. So it was making up for some of that. Imported brands, especially Mexican imports, and especially Corona and Modelo, have been on fire since they've been around. I used to work at Constellation Beer, and I ran the Modelo brand from 2007 to 11. And that brand has literally grown every year that it's been in existence, to the point now where it's actually the largest beer brand in America, if you didn't hear that, by dollar sales. Which is crazy to think back in 2007 when I was working on it. We had high hopes, but not that high, and it's just insane. But I'm here to say that for the first time in history, Modelo Especial is down 1.3% this year. Now, there's a lot of reasons for that, one of which is sort of the fact that a lot of their consumers are of Mexican descent, and there's a lot of less people going out and being active in the market and so on, sadly. But there's other forces at play here that were imports of that magnitude. That gets that big and the market goes down, you kind of come with it. Another brand that sort of picked up the slack for many years was Michelob Ultra. I'm sure some of you are Ultra drinkers. Ultra had grown for 20 years and is down 7% this year. So there's really no other brands that are picking up the pieces as the large beer brands continue to decline. Now pretty much every segment in beer is in decline for the first time since I've been in the category. It doesn't mean there's not opportunities, and I'll talk about that. Another driver of beer's decline has been the rise of these RTD cocktails, which I'll talk about now. The number one RTD cocktail in the market is High Noon, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen High Noon out in the market. So there's a lot of RTD cocktails that were born as RTD cocktails. So High Noon didn't exist, it gets created, it gets innovation, it launches, and 10 years later, or maybe 8 years later, it's the number one in the market. And back in the day, a lot of these RTDs were like overly sugary, overly sweet, not great tasting, but with the use of actual spirits in these cocktails and then moderating the sugar content and adding great flavors, these things have become quite tasty, if you haven't noticed. It's expected to be about a $2.7 billion category in the US in the next 5 or 6 years. And if you haven't noticed, 10 years ago, there would have been hardly any canned cocktails on shelf. If you go to a liquor store, Woodman's, Pick and Save, wherever, you'll see a lot of RTD cocktails of all kinds. So when something gets hot, it's everybody into the pool. As you can imagine, everyone's chasing the next growth opportunity. So like I said, you have brands like High Noon, which were born as RTD cocktails. You have another brand like Cutwater, also born as an RTD cocktail, but acquired by Anheuser-Busch. So Anheuser-Busch owns Cutwater and another brand called Neutral, which they also acquired, which are both doing very well in the market. You also have every major spirit brand with their own RTD cocktails. I'm sure you've seen these. I'm showing you Absolute, but there's Jim Beam, there's Crown Royal, there's Jack Daniels, there's Bacardi. All of them have an RTD cocktail. They were actually a little late to the game. They probably thought they were more insulated from this. And that's why none of them are necessarily in the top 10, but all of them are still doing well and growing. Has anyone heard of Carbless? It's based in Plymouth, Wisconsin. So it's a locally started brand by an entrepreneur who I've gotten to know. Adam and his wife started it because he just wanted something different. It tasted good when he brought it to parties, so they put it in a can, gave it a great name, have done great marketing, and it's on fire right now. It's the number one RTD in the state of Wisconsin, and in a lot of states that it enters, it takes High Noon head on, and it's only in 18 states in the country, but growing fast. So it's a little bit of a Wisconsin success story. Another thing that's interesting is collaborations. And so everyone knows Leinie's. I used to work on the Leinenkugel brand as part of Molson Coors. And they've partnered with our very own Milwaukee-based craft distillery, Central Standard, and they've created a can of cocktails, a line of canned cocktails, and of course, it includes a brandy old-fashioned, which is actually quite good if you have a chance to try one. Yeah, it's very good. I'm very proud of those guys. Buying alcohol has also changed. So it used to be a trip to the liquor store, the grocery store. Now you can actually have it delivered right to your home. E-commerce and direct-to-consumer, when some of the regulations were sort of loosened during COVID, it grew 240%, and that's still growing. These folks in the digital space are allowed to give you a curated shelf set that's custom to you based on your shopping habits. They do virtual tasting, so log into an event, taste something with an expert. You don't have to be live and in person to do it. And have delivery right to your door. And in the world of non-alc beer, that's really exploded. There's far less regulation. So it depends where you live. Alcohol delivery to your door might not be legal. It might be. It depends where you live. But what is widely available is non-alcohol beer that you order online, and it's delivered and shipped right to your door. So the digital shelf is now just as important as the real shelf. Another driver of change is literally generational. I mentioned the Gen Z. I have 3 Gen Z children, all legal drinking age now. And as they continue to enter the 21 plus cohort, their influence becomes more and more and more. So you see their influence now on the macro trends of the industry. But this whole generation is really much more, and it's happening across generations, but this generation really about wellness, about mindfulness, about control, and they're just drinking less or they're drinking differently. And 2 years ago I saw a stat, only 43% of 21 plus Gen Z were drinking alcohol. Now, as that ages up and it continues to grow and more people enter the segment, it's gonna normalize to every other generation, but they are definitely drinking less as well. In fact, there's a thing called intermittent sobriety where a lot of people in this generation will just stop drinking for a period of time, which is fine. You've all seen, heard of, participated in Dry January. That's the phenomenon there. 64% of Gen Z basically does intermittent sobriety from time to time. This trend of moderation and control is not just a Gen Z thing. It's across generations, and so it's really led to the explosive growth of non-alcoholic beer and non-alcoholic everything. So I think that's the next slide. So non-alc has burst onto the scene, and it's mostly beer, but it's not only beer. You can find non-alc wine, non-alc spirits. I'm still a little bit confused by that. You can find, who here has been to a restaurant and has noticed more recently like a list of mocktails on the menu? Yeah, everybody. And that's just like taking that concept of a cocktail, the experience, the flavor, the customization, and excluding the alcohol. So that's really booming. But non-alc beer in particular is really on fire. And if you think back only 7, 8 years ago, the only non-alc beers available were brands like Sharps and O'Doul's, which I see a lot of people going, oof, because it wasn't pleasant. And so they did not really grow or boom. But if you take this growing consumer trend of wellness, mindfulness, control, and you add to it new technology in brewing, new abilities to strip out alcohol from beer, new yeast strains that don't produce alcohol, you add all that together and you get a massive boom in non-alc beer. And if you haven't tried a non-alc beer in a while, I suggest you give one a try, and you might have a hard time telling the difference between that and a regular beer. We have one, Asahi Super Dry 00. Blind tasting, it's very hard to tell the difference. And that combination has led to a massive explosion in beer, in the non-alc beer. Who's heard of Athletic? Probably most people. That started less than a decade ago solely as a craft brewery for non-alc beer. And again, I'm slow to catch up, but even then I'm like, is that really going to work? Yes, it did work. Their valuation is $500 million probably right now, if not more. And they're leading the charge. But other brands that have been in the beer category for a long time are also doing well with non-alc, like Heineken 00 is a massive brand. Bud 00, the list goes on. You can find many, many 00 alternatives in the market now. The next thing is a phenomenon that happens when you combine alcohol and non-alcohol. It's the next slide. Has anyone heard of zebra striping? It's the latest trend in drinking, which is on the same occasion, you're out with your friends, your first drink might be a regular beer, your next drink is an NA beer, then maybe it's another regular beer, and you go back and forth on the same occasion as a way to control things. You never leave the occasion, you never stop socializing, you have something in your hand, might be a regular beer, an NA beer, but you go back and forth. So this zebra striping, I just heard of it a couple months ago, and I love the name. It's a not so colorful description of a very common phenomenon now. So this evolving landscape wouldn't be complete without talking about what might be one of the most disruptive forces that's happening. It's still early days, but we'll see how it shakes out. And that is the growth of cannabis and basically hemp-derived THC beverages, which for many, many, many years would have been something that was taboo or on the fringe. It's now quite mainstream. And for some consumers, they actually associate cannabis and THC with health and wellness and moderation and control, right? There's no hangover, and some people just believe it's a better alternative to drinking alcohol. I don't know if you guys can recall, just 2 years ago, there was no THC-derived hemp beverages in Wisconsin on the shelf. Now if you go into Woodman's, Quick Trip is carrying it now. So everybody's into the game. Distributors are carrying it. There's a lot of legal uncertainty. There's a lot of regulation that's probably coming, but right now it's highly unregulated and it's a bit of a free-for-all. But make no mistake about it that these beverages are growing and taking share from the rest of us. It's a younger demographic and it's eaten up lots of shelf space, which is a challenge for all of us in the business. And so what happens during disruption is everybody is trying to go to where the consumer is, and they're chasing the latest trends and trying to grow their portfolio. So what does that lead to? That leads to the blurring of lines. So 20 years ago when I entered at Miller Brewing Company on Highland Boulevard, We were a beer company and we made beer. Spirits companies made spirits. Wine companies stayed in the vineyards, and soda companies served soda pop and other things like that. That's all changed. If you look here on this slide, those are all Coca-Cola non-alcoholic brands that have entered the alcoholic space. So Topo Chico and Simply is like the largest juice brand in America, partnered with Molson Coors, and Molson Coors sells Topo Chico hard cocktails and Simply spiked. Fresca is also a Coke product. There's now a spiked version of Fresca. Most people don't even know Fresca still existed. Now it exists as an alcohol. But it's doing okay, and it's a partnership with Constellation. So Coke is spreading their wings across multiple partners, including with Brown-Forman. I think 5 years ago that would have been Jack Daniels and Cola. And now it's Jack and Coke, which is what people call it anyway, right? So, next slide. You have brands that are traditionally non-alc that, like I said, now getting into alcohol space, including Arizona tea. Everyone's probably seen it at Quick Trip. You buy a large can, it's good stuff. Now you can get Arizona hard tea. And hard teas are actually probably the fastest growing RTD right now. Really, really hot. It could be sparkling, or mostly could be still with no bubbles. Next slide. This is for real. So even fast food chains said, we got to get in on this. In some ways it makes a little bit of sense because they've kind of become known for their cherry limeades and all that stuff. So now there's that version with alcohol. I really don't know how it's doing in the market. I just think it's an example. But the next slide, I'll say, when is enough enough? This is, if you don't know, this is actually from a Saturday Night Live skit. This followed right after they brought out the JCPenney hard seltzer. But I thought it was hilarious because this is kind of what happens in the market. When things get hot, everybody wants a piece. And then sometimes, as we would say in Milwaukee, it jumps the shark. At the same time, beer companies, as I already mentioned, through acquisition, Anheuser-Busch is big into canned cocktails. But this is not a whiskey company. This is Molson Coors Spirits. So Molson Coors has a spirit called Blue Run, which they acquired, and then they created on their own a brand called Five Trail, which was done by the Coors family. So they're full on into full strength bottled spirits. It might be just me. There we go. This is also a Molson Coors brand. It's a non-alcoholic energy drink called ZOA. It was a partnership with The Rock, and Molson Coors owns ZOA in the market. So trying to branch out into non-alc as well. And then, I know I've mentioned High Noon already, but did you know that High Noon was launched by Gallo? Like the largest wine, one of the largest wine companies in the US. Gallo, very well known as one of the best field sales and execution organizations in the alc bev space. Took this, launched it, ran with it, and to their credit have executed the heck out of it, and it's a massive brand in the market now, but it is owned by a wine company. So this, all these massive changes don't just blur the lines from a brand perspective, but also the distributor side. And if you're not familiar, and you probably are, but in the US, we operate under a 3-tier system, which is quite unique in the world, where we have suppliers like us, you have distributors who are in the middle, and then you have retailers. We are not allowed to sell anything directly from ourselves to retail. So distributors play that important role. And again, when I started in 2005, the distributor lanes were very, very well defined as well. Beer distributors were beer distributors, wine distributors were wine and spirits distributors, focused on that. CSD, soda, were all done by the Coke and Pepsi bottling system and so on. Now, the major distributors are trying to build out their portfolio to make sure they can keep up with every consumer trend. So if you think about Reyes Beverage Group, they're based out of Chicago, huge company, like bigger than any of its suppliers. They're the largest, one of their businesses is being the largest beer distributor in the United States with operations in many, many states in the country. They now are big into non-alc. They're one of the largest Coke distributors in the world, and they are now adding many, many more wines and spirits brands to their portfolio. So distributor tier is also being disrupted as everybody chases the consumer to try to figure out where they're headed next. So what does this mean for Asahi in the US? Like why, maybe some of you are like, why are you investing and going big in a market like this? The reality is, with all this turbulence and with all the change comes just as many opportunities. And so we think the time is right for us to plant a flag in the United States and to go big. Even though I would actually argue that the change in the industry in the last 10 years is greater than the change in the industry in the 100 years that preceded it. And I feel strongly about that. So how do we take on this turbulence? Like any turbulence, you got to buckle up, you got to prepare, you got to brace yourself, but then you got to go for it. And that's what we're doing. For us, there's a few key things that we're focused on. First and foremost, it's about building our brands. That's second. First and foremost, it's about building our organization and our team. We are just coming off of a merger of two different organizations. We are a young organization now with an independent, relatively small company in Waunakee, Wisconsin, being purchased by the 7th largest beer company in the world. And as you can imagine, if you're on the Octopi side, that can be quite intimidating. And one of my mandates is to make sure that we integrate that organization into Asahi and that we create a new culture that's sort of the best of both worlds. It would be easy. Most of Octopi employees have never worked for a large multinational company. It actually started 10 years ago as a small craft brewery in Madison. And so it would be easy to be overwhelmed and to do too much too fast and to kind of freak people out. So we're taking it at a proper pace, and we're really focused on showing the team at Octopi the good stuff that we bring to the table. Not just having them drink from a fire hose with change, but to make them excited about the $35 million we've invested in the last 18 months to improve quality, to improve our capabilities, to improve health and safety. So $35 million investment, also enabling us to brew and make Asahi Super Dry for the first time in the United States. We have to talk about how we have access to some of the greatest talent in the world, and we can bring people over to help our cause, which we've done. I work alongside people from Poland, the Czech Republic, Colombia, and so it's a great diverse team from people all over the world. And having that leadership team in place to drive this culture change is going to be really important. And then the last thing is to show our employees that there's something in it for them, that they're now part of an organization that has career pathing, career development, opportunities to go to Europe, to go to Asia, whatever that might be. So we're hard at work on building one Asahi culture in the United States as we take on this new challenge. The next one is about our brands, and that's my background is in brands. I've worked for SC Johnson, I've sold ice cream, I've sold air fresheners. Finally found my calling in 2005 in the beer business. It's a little more exciting to talk about beer than to talk about the next scent of a Glade plugin, which I did for 5 years. But I learned a lot. The most important thing I learned is it's all about brands. So even in a market where there's decline and in the market where there's turbulence and turmoil, if you have a brand that you can make distinct and relevant, you can win. And so those are the two things we're focused on, taking all of our brands and making sure they have a point of difference, that they mean something, and that what they mean is relevant to the consumers we're going after. And when we do that, we'll be successful. That concept goes for our current portfolio, but also our expanded portfolio, which we'll be working on over the next few years as we bring out new innovations. Of course, as we grow, it's really important to note that we are doing this in a responsible manner. As a global mandate for Asahi, as a large beer organization in the world, we try to take everything very seriously, and we promote responsible consumption. We actually try to combat irresponsible consumption. We believe when used properly, our brands and our beers can be of high quality, they can be of exceptional taste, they can deliver fun experiences, and like I said, they can drive human connection. So we're really, really careful about how we market things, how we talk about our brands, and how we build our business. The next thing, you might actually say, well, brands and all, that's great, but in a market that's declining, what are you really gonna do? This is just to show you there's always glimmers of hope, right? So I mentioned this already. Total beer, First half of the year, down 2.9%. Total imports down 1%. There you see non-alc beer. This is a lower growth trend than in the past, but the base just keeps getting bigger, so it's pretty significant. There you see Modelo in decline, Corona in decline, Stella Artois in decline. But what happens when you get to Japanese imports? They're exploding right now. I don't know if you've noticed, and maybe I've noticed because I'm in the business now, but Japanese culture is having a moment across the world. Whether it's Japanese food, fashion, music, anime, travel. So I just saw a stat that travel to Japan is at the highest level it's ever been. And I've heard people talking about going to Japan more than I ever have. And so the good news about Japanese products is they come already with a preconceived notion of high quality. So the fact that we're making something of such high quality in Waunakee, Wisconsin, that we can get out to the market faster, that we can reduce the supply chain, reduce our CO2 footprint, and be successful in the market. Now's our chance to harness all that love of all things Japanese and stand out in the market. And our goal is to take down Sapporo as the #1 Japanese beer in the US. And if you haven't tried it, my math skills are a little weak. I asked my team to get me 5 cases of samples, but I did not realize they were 12-pack cases. So there will be a mad dash to pick up a sample. Sorry to the folks in the back, but I'll bring more for you to hand out. But if you haven't tried Asahi Super Dry, it's a truly fantastic beer. Super crisp, refreshing, it's perfect for the American palate, and it goes great with food and many other things. And then the other thing that we're doing is innovating with pace. The reason we bought the Octopi Brewery is we can make just about anything at our facility. And I'm happy to report that through a lot of hard work, collaborating with the global team out of Japan, out of our colleagues in Europe, in November we'll be launching our first, guess what, RTD cocktail, Japanese inspired. Specifically to start it through our Asian route to market. We have a wholesaler that focuses purely on the Asian route to market, and that's a big business for us. So we're gonna start there, see how it does, see what we can learn, and then potentially expand that to the general market, as we call it. But this is just the beginning of our innovation agenda. We want to be, actually, we have the opportunity to be the innovation hub of all Asahi in Europe and in North America, because we're the only facility that's not a 120-year-old brewery. Those breweries are hard to change and hard to bring innovation and hard to move fast. We're the opposite. So we are proudly going to be an innovation hub for all of Asahi. And then we also have to continue to work on relationships. We're a bit young in the category. I have a lot of connections, but we need to upgrade our ability to connect with our distributor partners, to have the right relationships with them so that they can, I like to say, give us more than our fair share of time and attention, which is really what we have to do because we're so small. We have to partner with retailers like Quick Trip, make sure we get distribution out there in the world. And we have to start having a seat at the table in the industry organizations like the Beer Institute or the National Beer Wholesalers Association, so that we have a seat at the table and have a voice in addressing all the issues that are facing our industry as a whole. So relationships are going to be something I spend a lot of time on. And then finally, the biggest part of our business is co-packing. So we will continue to be a co-packer. We make non-alc beer, we make our own beer, we make beer for other people, we make seltzers, RTDs, we make prebiotic sodas for a major brand in the country. And so we'll always be a co-packer. That's good and bad. Co-packing is a fickle business where clients can come and go, and so we're always chasing the next big client. We're currently doing that for next year. But it also is great because it actually insulates us from just being beholden to one segment. So we can sell our beer, make money, grow our brands, but we can also make all kinds of other things. And if one category declines, we replace that client with a category that's hot. And so we can insulate our business from a lot of the risks that most beer companies feel. So I hope you have a sense of what you probably have already seen as a consumer in the market, that we're living in a chaotic and turbulent time. Basically, the industry has been turned upside down in a decade, and it's been crazy to be part of it and to watch it happen and to feel the impact. Consumers are driving this, and we as brands and organizations are chasing it, trying to keep up. I encourage you, if you haven't noticed after this talk, if you go to Pick and Save or Woodman's, which carries everything, Discount Liquor, wherever you go, just pause, take a step back, and look at the landscape of what you're looking at and think about what it looked like 10 years ago. It's vastly different. you might have a harder time finding the big beer brands and an easier time finding a THC canned beverage. And I also hope you have a better understanding of our organization. We're excited. This is why I joined the company. I've only been here 7 months, brought in to help deliver this strategic agenda and help make some of these changes and to build our team and to build our business. I'm personally super excited about it. I love what I'm doing right now. I am buckled up and I'm braced for impact, but also ready to take the challenge head on, as is all of our team. And I'll leave you all with a little sizzle video of our time and attention that we've spent trying to become a qualified Asahi Super Dry brewery in the United States. It's very quick, Dave.
When Asahi created the world's first super dry beer in 1987, we changed the world of beer forever. Today, we've created another beer in 1987. We changed the world of beer forever. Today, we've created another landmark moment by brewing Asahi Super Dry for the first time in North America. Under the supervision of Japanese master brewers, Asahi's Octopi Brewery in Wisconsin has been selected to brew beer that perfectly matches the unique super dry taste that you'd enjoy in Japan. Dry and crisp with a quick, clean finish. So let's raise a glass and say kanpai to bringing Japan's #1 selling beer to the U.S.
And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Paul, thank you so much for spending some time with us today, and we already have a lineup here
Okay, good.
of questions, so please kick off your question by introducing yourself.
Hi, Jackie Frederick. This was great about the growth in the U.S. market. I am curious, what about the global market? You know, I look at China, India, you know, 2 largest populated country. Can you comment about the opportunity for growth with the diversity of beverages?
Yeah, it's pretty much, I was talking about the United States, but it's a relatively global phenomenon, all of these things that are happening. We're sort of, actually from a non-alc beer perspective, we're about 10 years behind Europe, but also catching up fast. Markets like China, no one would know, but the largest beer brand in the world is a brand from China that's only sold in China called Snow. It's just a matter of how many people are there. But those markets are evolving very fast as well, sort of skipping a lot of the early stages that we went through and kind of accelerating faster into the world of spirits and RTDs and all those things. And so I've been so head down focused on the US right now. I don't know what Asahi's strategic intent is. I know we're big across most of Asia and we are entering the Chinese market as well. And I'm sure we have a plan to figure out what to do in India, but those markets, while their per capita consumption will pale in comparison to parts of, let's say, Eastern Europe, where Czech Republic is by far the most per capita consumption. I was just there, I saw it firsthand. But there's just so many people that even if their per capita consumption is a third of what it is in other countries, they will become the largest alcohol markets in the world. So it's a matter of where are they in the life cycle of development and what the current trends are. It's gonna be the same thing. What the consumers are driving is gonna be where companies focus, and I do believe it's kind of going to be similar to what we're seeing in the States.
Hi, Joanne Grunow. With the growth in the non-alcoholic sector in beer and spirits, why do you think the same thing has not happened in wine?
Because non-alcoholic wine is grape juice? I don't know. I don't know that it's not happening. I think it is happening, but it's been a bit slower on the uptake, and I think it has more to do with alternatives that are out there, and I know I mockingly said, like, I think conceptually there's a little bit of a bigger barrier to thinking about wine and being non-alc, but it'll probably get there. I know there's a lot of brands entering that space. I don't know if you've seen it out there. I don't know why the adoption is a little bit slower, but I'm sure it'll become a major player in the market, as similar to the technology and innovation that's led to beer being just better. NA beer is just better than it ever was. I think I've heard some some mixed reviews on NA wine. So I just think they have to do a lot to improve the product quality, and then to do a lot to get the message out there that this is a good alternative to an alcohol wine.
With Sapporo being 10% of the size of Asahi nationally or internationally, why do you think that they had such a strong foothold here? Is it their sexier can? And then how do you see people drinking Japanese beer outside of a Japanese restaurant? Because that seems to be, outside of hipsters, who else would drink Japanese beer at home?
Yeah, great question.
Not to be offensive.
No, we love hipsters. The Sapporo has just been at it and more effective at it in the US longer than Asahi has, number one. So they and then just grew and grew and grew. And they, more than us, are more synonymous with availability in the Asian dining channel and much bigger. And that started to cross over more into the general market. You start to see it at regular grocery stores and liquor stores. That big can, that big sexy, do you call it a sexy can? Yeah. It's by far their number one SKU, by far. And it is really nice. Ours is less sexy, but better. But it is, they have a much broader distribution footprint, much more offerings in terms of the packs that they bring to the market. We're playing catch up on a lot of those things. We will put our product quality against theirs any day of the week. And if we can get, I know this for a fact, if we get people to try Asahi Super Dry, they're in. We can get people to switch, I'm confident of that. In terms of selling it outside of the Asian channel, it's hard to imagine sitting here that that's possible, but if you go to our strongest markets, Southern California, New York, we've actually gotten into, I've had Asahi Super Dry at barbecue restaurants, at a sandwich place. I've had it at Dodger Stadium. Dodgers happen to be a little bit prolific in Japanese baseball players, so we have a radio media deal with the Dodgers. In that market we thrive, and we're selling a lot of Asahi at Dodger games, and so that is the long-term vision, is to get people to try it and to know that it's not just a beer for Japanese food, that it is actually super crisp, super refreshing, no lingering aftertaste. It's basically designed to be the perfect beer for food. And if we can get more and more trial, we'll be able to succeed outside of the Asian channel, for sure. And we've shown that in our more developed markets. Yeah.
Paul, I think we could probably spend 20 more minutes asking you questions, but we want to honor everybody's time. So will you stay after
Yeah,
for
I
a few
will, of
minutes?
course.
And if we didn't get to your question, I apologize, but I'm sure Paul will be happy to talk to
I
you.
will, yeah.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much, Paul.
Yep.